Hi all, welcome to Diversified Finance. My name is Laka. So today we're going to discuss a very important topic. It's a quick update on Australian housing market and it's going to be vlog number 7. So we have a hypothesis today. So we're going to think that the housing market will keep on going up in price. And in regards to that, we're going to look at the negatives and the positives. So as I go through these points, I'll relate it to supply and demand because supply and demand is the key fundamental drivers when you think about any kind of market. So let me start with by negatives. The first one is a high unemployment rate. So as we know, because of COVID-19, there's a lot of people lost their job. I think it's about 600,000 people lost their job, and then there's a lot of people got stood down. So when there's so much uncertainty, people are not going to get into the housing market because they don't even know what's going to happen for the next 6 months or next 6 to 12 months. So they'll probably sit back and wait, or they'll start looking for another job. And given that there's so much uncertainty, they will not get into the housing market. So it'll cut down the demand. And also, if you are an owner occupier or if you're an investor, if you're struggling with your repayments, you probably be forced to sell. So if that happens, then it will increase the supply, so it will negatively affect the housing market. And the second one is rental market oversupply. So as we know, for example, Airbnb, they are struggling at the moment. The net immigration from overseas is kind of zero at the moment. So the short stay Airbnb properties are coming to the long rental lease market, and at the same time they are still building a lot of properties, a lot of units at the moment. So the rental sub market has gone up in numbers, and that will negatively affect on the housing market because when there's so much rental properties out there, the rent that you would get out of that property will be less. So in that case, in that case, a property might not look very attractive, like for the investors. So they'll probably sit back and look at the housing market, and they'll probably wait, thinking that housing market might go down even more. um, and also it might not give investors like a lot of confidence to get into the housing market. So if they especially for mom and dads, they already have a own home, and they might not try to invest into the housing market, given that even though they pay say $600,000-700,000 for a property, they might not get enough rent out of that property. So if that happens, they're not gonna get into the housing market, they're not gonna invest in money. And the third one is closed borders. So as we know, the net migration at the moment is zero. So when people come from other countries, they need a place to live, a place to rent, or they might thinking of buying a property. So when there's not many people coming out of other countries, it'll cut down the demand. So and it's not good for the rental market as well, because there will be less people looking to rent. And number four is credit squeeze. As we know, banks are kind of some banks, not all of them. Some banks are kind of worried, about the economic condition at the moment. So when you go up to the bank, you might not be able to borrow money the way you used to borrow, and they kind of going through all your expenses, income, and likewise, just to make sure before they lend any money that they want to make sure that you can pay it back, given that this uncertainty we are seeing at the moment. So it's not easy with some banks to get a home loan. So that will negatively affect the housing market as well, and of course it will affect the demand. And number five, wages growth. So as we know, public servants, they're not going to have any pay rise for the next 12 months, as per what New South Wales Premier announced few days ago. And lot of people are having a pay cut, like 20% pay cut. So if someone used to be on 100,000, they're probably on 80,000 at the moment because of COVID-19. So when people get less money, so income is less, expenses probably the same, so they kind of struggling to pay off their mortgage and other bills and other expenses. So this will definitely negatively affect the housing market. And also, if you look at the baby boomers, people who bought their house probably in mid 90s or early 2000s, they were probably in their mid 60s or 60s or mid 60s or in 70s. So they'll probably be thinking right now it's harder for them to find a job because they're all older people are kind of hard to find a job. And because of that, but they need to pay their medical expenses. They still need money, like to buy groceries and things like that. So if they are living in a massive house, they might think, okay, maybe it's a chance for me to like sell my house, take some money out and downsize, like go into a unit, sell their big house because their kids are probably not living with them anymore and they're living in a massive house. There's a lot of space that they don't use. So if that happens, they'll probably sell their house, or they might even have, even if they have like investment properties, they will sell that as well. So that will increase the supply, and it could negatively affect the housing market. And number seven would be is there are a lot of people, like especially adults, like in their mid 30s or 30s, because of COVID-19 they lost their job. They probably decide, okay, I can't rent anymore because I'm not getting enough money at the moment, or maybe I'm on job keeper or job seeker. So they probably decided like to move back and live with their parents. So if that happens, like that's not looking good for the rental market. So there'll be less people looking to rent, because if everyone, all the adults, like people married with kids, they can go back and stay with their parents, and that will not looking good for that will decrease the demand for rental market as well. So that's number seven, point number seven. So those are the negatives. So let's look at the positives. Thank God we still have the job keeper and job seeker. So unless the government came up with this job keeper seeker program, the unemployment would have been closer to 50,000, right? So there are still people on a job keeper seeker payment, especially job keeper payment, but their company, after say in September when they opens up, they might not get their job back. So it could be like a zombie company. It's just sitting there like just because of the job keeper payment. But it's a good thing, like because people still can pay their repayment, people still can pay their rent. Even job seeker has doubled from a new start allowance payment. Compared to that, it got doubled when it got to when they changed it to job seeker. So people have more money in their pocket now, so they can pay their rent and likewise. So that's a good thing, like positive thing for the housing market at the moment. So, and the second one is government intervention. So government is looking at different kind of policies at the moment. They might come up with some kind of grants for first home buyers, or even for any buyer, right? Because they don't want the housing market to go down in value. So government will intervene eventually, trying to like keep the housing market up there. So that's a positive for the housing market as well. And number three, Australians, like they are still in love with property. Like it's just like it's the Australian dream, right, to own a house. So regardless, even if they say housing market drop by 10-20%, they will get in and then they'll probably start buying. So they will create a lot of demand as well. So these are the negatives and positives. But recently, CBA announced that they probably be thinking the worst case scenario, housing market might come down by 30% by 2022. But if you think about the job seeker and job keeper, like the government can always increase it for another 6 to 12 months when it ends in September, and government can still intervene, like and give people like first home buyers grant, or anyone who's getting into the housing market, they can give 10-20,000 or 40-50,000 kind of a grant to make people get into the housing market. So there are a lot of things happening at the moment, but things are really uncertain at the moment right now. So we kind of have to wait and see. But as we know, pre-COVID, like the biggest problem the housing market had, because we had too much debt. Like people are drowning in debt. Because I'm not blaming anyone. It's unfortunate the housing market went up so high. Like I think it's like during the peak it used to be around like 13 times compared to your average salary. So average house is like 13 times compared to average salary. This is really bad. It should be around like 5 to 6 kind of range. So because of that, people had to borrow so much money. Like everybody needed shelter. Like I'm not gonna argue with that. But unfortunately, the housing market has gone up so much. Like the second biggest, most expensive housing market in the world at the moment. So that's why people have to like borrow so much money to get into the housing market. It's kind of sad, but that people are in a lot of debt. Given that we have COVID-19 and there's a lot of uncertainty whether they're gonna get their job back or not, or what will happen after September 11th when job keeper seeker payment tapers off. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are worried so much. So that's the main reason, because they borrowed so much money. So let's wait and see. And as I explained here, there are more negatives compared to positives, but we don't know what the government might come up with, like, for the past coming 6 to 12 months or so. They might come up with some new policies. So it's we have to wait and see what will happen. So I think that's it for today. Until I talk to you in the next video. See ya.